young man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while, when will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome in, everybody. It is another Pirate Live stream. So let us think about it. What do we have? We have our San Pellegrino. Everybody should have some. We also have a hearty yar. Yar, sir. Yar, I say. Excellent. And we've got our Muppet Cup. Have you considered buying a cup on the store? Because we have them. It's a good thing to think about on a Muppet Friday live stream. That is the sort of thing that you should be considering. There we go. Now I got some San Pel in it. I've got some mint tea, which is delicious. It smells gorgeous. It's a 3-mint tea. I don't know what that means, other than it's a 3-mint tea. And then I've got my captain's mug, so that I'm now officially able to pirate the ship straight from Pirate Island. And in that is my turmeric tea. So we are ready. We're ready to set sail on the open seas of awesome exploration of interesting ideas, or at least important ones. Maybe they're not interesting, but maybe they're really important to understand. So let's grab our book and see what we have for sagely advice before we get underway. The two most celebrated acts of courage in history aren't Homeric fighters, but two Eastern Mediterranean fellows who died, even sought death for their ideas. Interesting. That is a fascinating quote. It has been another wild week. It's going to get wilder and wilder. Chaos is here, for better or for worse. So things are going to get crazier, not less crazier. And it is the holidays. So, I won't be back. Well, I don't have any plans to be back on before Christmas, not with a live stream anyway. So Merry Christmas. None of this happy holidays garbage nonsense. We don't do that. Yeah, it's interesting that died down, the whole happy holidays, Merry Christmas argument. I haven't heard any of that down here, thankfully. I haven't heard any since I moved down south. Maybe that's what it is. You're in a sane place with sane people, and you don't get insane people being stupid. I did a live stream yesterday on commentators who suck, which is, somewhat about the Piers Morgan, Nick Fuentes interview. And yeah, it's actually coming right along. 94 views is actually not bad. And yeah, there's some crossover from there to here, actually. So maybe if you listen to that live stream, you'll hear some crossover into this one. This is a much broader topic, of course. I know we've got conspiracy theories around shootings in New England, which is just hysterical to me. Um, the proliferation of conspiracy theories is going to continue because people have more access to more information. And the more information you have, the more ways you can put that information together in a way that makes sense. And so part of sense making in the world of individualism is just that process of creating more conspiracies and picking your own conspiracy. And maybe people like Candace Owens should be constrained in some way. And this is going to be the core issue. Like we're not there yet. I keep asking people on Twitter, like, if basically, have you seen it yet? And no one's there yet. No one's there yet, right? The problem is that you have to constrain people for their own good. And until we have that discussion, things will continue to degrade because constraint is what's missing. And when you have a bunch of people not constraining themselves and doing commentary on a conversation or rather an interview that they can't even correctly label as an interview, we're a long way from fixing anything, guys. We're a long, long way. Wow. I might do a video putting everything in ring psychology just to make fun of academic agent. No, I was right the first time, academic idiot. Academic. If that's academics, we're in a lot of trouble. It's putting everything into a wrestling frame. My goodness. I know you liked LARPing or think that LARPing was a good idea or something, but also I got a question as to how low IQ goes. Are you sure it can't be a negative number? Because I'm pretty sure it should. A young God, if civilization is not sufficiently anti-fragile versus vis-a-vis Candace Owens, it deserves what it manifests. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I'm not surprised that you framed it that way. Civilization doesn't deserve anything, and it doesn't get anything. It's the people in it that manifest it. But I can understand your confusion. Treating civilization as an entity is probably not a fantastic way to think about the world. The sort of thing that the Fuentes commenters miss. Yeah, I might do a video on radicalization too, because I think, and that did resonate. I got clips on the Discord server that did resonate too. How to radicalize somebody is not what you think. It's not what you guys are thinking is happening. Everyone's got everything backwards. It's so disgusting, and it really is. We'll say a direct and clear symptom of this question, which is, what is reality? So that seems to be causing a good deal of the problem. And one of the things we're trying to do is to agree on reality. And that ain't ever going to work. So I don't know why we're doing that. That's kind of dumb. Agreement is a tricky thing. People break agreements all the time because people lie. So that's a bad strategy right there. You would think that would be obvious and I wouldn't have to say it, but the core question is, why is this confusing to people, this idea of reality? And I think partially because people have been slaughtering the language, the English language in particular, for decades. And this is what happens when sort of everyone is literate. No one can agree on how to treat and use words. And so you get a bunch of word salad, like agnostic atheist. It's still my favorite. I'm like, you're on a broadcast show. Granted, it's YouTube, but it's a large audience YouTube show. And you unabashedly said agnostic atheist. as a designator for yourself. Well, at least we know you have an identity crisis that's pretty severe, I guess. But do you understand the English language? Um, I don't know. I got questions. And I did go over this in an earlier live stream, right? Um, this problem of too many people knowing too many words and not knowing the rules of putting words together, which are not grammar. Grammar is one set of rules of which types of words go in which order, but that's not putting which words together. It's kind of part of it. I mean, you can usually just modify the word to make it go with another word, and that's grammar, but that's not, you're not changing the word, you're just modifying that base word to fit in a sentence. That's not the same thing as like agnostic atheist, which have a mutually exclusive conflict that can't be resolved. Like I don't know. There's too many people trying to use a language that they're not good at. And the thing is, this facilitates this confusion with language facilitates individualism because you get your own definition of each word, you get your own understanding of each word, you get your own relationship with each word. And so if you feel confused inside, as though you're both agnostic and certain that no God exists, then you can just throw those two words together and bang, you validated your own uh internal confirmation bias. Like, fantastic. I feel conflicted, so I'm going to use the language in a conflicted fashion, and that's going to strengthen me as an individual because now I have a label that I can assign to myself. That doesn't sound better. That sounds way worse. And internally, you can use language, right? You can put the word ring and psychology together to create a new branch of psychology, I guess. And because you can do that, like we'll say physically, uh, the therefore the language is yours to do with as you wish because you can, like, no one's going to stop you. I kind of agree. No one's going to stop you. Maybe we should though. That's and this has a side effect, right? It immediately causes skeptical cynicism towards the views of others because they're not using the language the way I'm using the language. So why should I trust them? Why should I believe them? Why should I buy into their ideas about the world? That's a valid question if you own the language or if you are able to have enough of the language to manipulate it any way you damn well please. And it goes a little bit deeper than that, actually. The basic confusion is the following. While you can find a way to make sense of anything, because you can actually just figure it out for yourself. You can figure things out for yourself. And you can do that with really pretty much anything. Everyone ends up doing that. Unfortunately, they do it differently because the thing they're figuring out for themselves is going to tend towards their own bias, which is a result of your personal private perspective. That's definitely going to happen because that's what happens. Now, the problem with that is that your sense of reality then cannot be verified or validated by others. And sure, that's pretty damn confusing since you cannot agree. Now, the complication is if you're on the internet and you're a crazy person, the odds that you can find one other person that's crazy enough to validate and verify your ideas is 100%. So what you end up with is a lot of enclaves of crazy people who are crazy about similar sorts of things. Now, of course, these groups tend to break up. Some of them don't. Some of them are, basically mirroring cluster disorders. They would call them, I think, in psychology. And so they can last for a very long time with alien conspiracy theories, for example. Um, that's not that hard to do because it's a very common way to be crazy about the world. So you can find agreement, but then there's groups of people you don't agree with or can't agree with because they refuse to believe that an agnostic atheist could exist or that saying ring psychology makes any sense at all. A lunatic. Right? And so the problem is clear. The confusion is if your ability to make sense of the world is reality, then we have an issue. Everyone's going to end up with a slightly different reality. And sometimes those realities are going to be vastly different in extremely important ways. And one change can, one seemingly small change to your perception of reality compared to somebody else's can make a huge difference in how you see everything. And that's part of the problem. We're stuck in our heads and we're not paying attention to what's outside of our heads. And the less we, sort of are able to do that, the more we fall into preferring our predictions, our imagination of the world over any other way of going through the world. And then we lose a sense for where we end and other things begin. Very important skill to have. So why do people tend to think reality is, we'll say, more than it is? They'll use terms like Baudrillard's hyper reality. Okay. Putting a modifier on reality is not a very useful way to speak in the world ever, unless you're actually talking about a subset of reality that we'll say is coherent. That is very hard to do. And the reason why reality sort of comes across to us as a difficult and confusing subject is partially because reality is a self-similar fractal, which means we see what look like echoes from larger aspects of reality that we don't have access to. And because we have a sense of these larger and smaller aspects of reality, because it ends up we're embedded in them, right? And we feel their influence. We're aware of their presence. They have an impact on us. This ends up being very confusing because if reality is just the model in your head and your head cannot model something bigger than it, which seems perfectly reasonable to assume, or even bigger than you have access to, because I hate to break this to people, but you were born into and are embedded in reality. So reality is bigger than you because you're inside of it. There aren't different versions of it because then you're destroying the utility of having a word that has the conception of reality. A partial definition of reality is that which objects to your subjective experience. It's a good way to think about it. And the thing is, it's confusing to see echoes and to see smaller versions of things that we're embedded in. We don't see the things we're embedded in clearly because they're on the same level as us. and we don't see the things bigger than us because they're too big for our field of view. And we see the things smaller than us, and we can pick which detail level to some extent, but you can't do that looking up, and you can't do that looking across. And if we don't understand that, we think, well, looking up perspective and looking down perspective gives you the same facilities as the looking across perspective, then you're lost. That's an equality doctrine. It's not going to fly. It's not going to help you, but it will make things worse. So, there's that, I guess. But what then happens from this? Well, materialism. This idea that the material is the prime mover of the world or the prime determiner of reality, for example, that is definitely all tied up. And why? Because you need to default to something outside your head to prove, especially to other people, but also to yourself, that your version of reality is correct, that it exists, and you have a precise and accurate take on it. So you prefer material, or perhaps not the physical. John Vervaeke talks about, I'm not a reductionist physicalist or something. And I'm like, why are we talking like this? We could instead prefer the experts who did a test on something, and then they can tell us the results of that test and the implications of that test based on their own personal private perspective and what that actually means. Which we miss all the other people that ran the same test, maybe didn't even get the same results, or maybe got exactly the same results, came completely different conclusions. Yeah, the perils of science. This is why you shouldn't listen to experts. Because ultimately, there is a material person representing a version of reality that you want to be able to hang your hat on and use as an authority to appeal to, not only for yourself, but to others. And you see people do this all the time. They'll say something like, yeah, but Nietzsche wrote, and I'm like, all right, but Nietzsche's an idiot, and he had syphilis, and he died alone. I'm not going to listen to his ideas on what life is, on what reality is, on human behavior, or anything remotely called philosophy. I'm just not going to listen to that person because whatever they thought didn't work. And I'm a pragmatist. So I'm like, syphilis and dying alone sounds not great. I'm going to take the other road. And you can do this for all of those guys, by the way. It works rather well. In fact, I saw a meme the other day about this. It was freaking hysterical. I'm like, I've been saying this for decades. I'm glad the memes are catching up. These guys all had miserable lives. That might be a hint. So using them as your material outside reference to reality. And these people get desperate, right? They're like, but Immanuel Kant changed the world. And almost, well, maybe, but not for the better. And they flip out. And usually they exit the argument because you don't have any place to go at that point. What are you going to do? Argue things got better since Immanuel Kant? That's not going to work. No one can make that case. So it just doesn't work. I'm like, okay. You have to take Heidegger seriously. He was a Nazi. I don't take Nazis seriously. What are you talking about? It was only for a little while. His philosophy didn't catch on to what was going on. I'm not going to adopt that philosophy if it leads me for 10 seconds into the Nazi party. I ain't touching that philosophy with a 10-foot pole. This is not hard. Like it just cracks me up. It really does. So that having that anchor of a material person or a book that a material person wrote, representing that reality, allows you to have an authoritative appeal outside of yourself. And because it's outside of you, it must be part of reality, which is true, right? And bonus, you have to talk about good and bad. We just said Immanuel Kant wrote a book and it changed a bunch of aspects of the world, which is a flat out lie, by the way, but whatever. Yeah, but it didn't get better, did it? So why do I care? I don't know, guys. Like maybe it's me. Oh no, definitely not me. That's a, oh my goodness. Yeah, it always cracks me up. And the thing is, so clearly, because I can move words around myself and smash them together however I want, but now I need an authority to appeal to. It's not just me. I'm not arrogant. I've got, Nietzsche on my side. We need an objective world to point to outside of ourselves that will allow us that authority to make a claim about reality. And then we have a way to solve being alone in our own personal, private, perspectival version of reality. That personal, private perspective keeps us held in. But that objective world says, no, 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 there's these things out there. And, we can appeal to this objective space, and that creates a reference for other people to agree or at least to relate to, right? Sadly, if their personal private perspective sees something different, disagreement happens, not agreement. You'll notice the science idiots all use this whole objective material reality appeal all the time. All the time. They'll say, well, we know this stuff is out there, and they'll point to some piece of information and they'll say, and therefore, my conclusion, whatever their conclusion is, sure, it's just a coincidence that it's always a conclusion that benefits their side of an argument and just ends up being ridiculously self-serving. But that's just a coincidence. It's not sample bias or confirmation bias or any of that, because scientist and scientific method or something. Perhaps now, when you look out into the world, you'll start to see the appeals for an objective material reality. Peterson does it. Carl Benjamin does it. They just, well, this is an ideology. Okay. How do you know the belief that you're putting forth is not an ideology? It's based on the individual's experience and the assumption that everyone shares a single perspective granted magically by information. Whose side are you on? But in fact, we don't have a single perspective. And it's not clear that everybody can hold more than their own perspective. And certainly in literature, this is covered. Flowers for Algernon covers this to some extent, at least in the beginning of the book. The change in perspective is a big part of storytelling. It's a John Travolta movie. It's called Phenomena. I think it's called Phenomena. Fantastic film. Same thing. It's a remake of Flowers for Algernon, basically. When something changes and your perspective is upgraded or downgraded, because sometimes it's downgraded, our agreement with our past selves change, right? Oh, I don't believe that anymore. What? Yeah, change and cyclicality are part of the equation. And this objective material reality doesn't account for interpretation. It doesn't account for context. It doesn't account for alternative explanations or other perspectives. It assumes those perspectives. That's why a lot of people, and it started with the science idiots in academia, of course, because they just poison everything they touch. They didn't used to, but they do now. They'll say things like, oh, well, let me set up a hypothetical. Okay, let me explain something to you. According to what hypothetical actually is defined as, you're no longer talking about reality. You might be talking about a potential in reality, or you might be talking about an event that happened in reality, but you also might be talking about pure fantasy where you could be an agnostic atheist, or there's such a concept as social justice, which certainly cannot exist. or maybe, there's a hypothetical place where in crypto, stable coins are somehow better than crypto because crypto still isn't a fiat currency or some other nonsense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And therefore, and George will forgive me if he ever watches this, you cannot use it to dispatch with the national debt. Makes no sense at all. Yeah, but it's backed by treasuries. You mean treasuries denominated in dollars? Sure. I guess your stable coin's backed in dollars. Seems like it'd be easier to just cut out the middleman of the crypto and pay it off in dollars. But hey, whatever. These ideas that somehow crypto isn't fiat, even though it's way more fiat than any other currency, these are facilitated by this objective material reality where once you have the template for economics in your head, you can then use that economics template to, and apply it to other things, right? So economics based on, we'll say hard currency, right, does not work the same as it does based in virtual currency. And there's technical reasons for this, right? And that means the economics actually changes. And so you can't use the old economics rules in the new technology. Sometimes you can, but often you can't. Because something fundamental has changed. That's why you care about the technology at all. Something fundamental changed. But in objective material reality, you can just find the pattern over there, apply it from that thing onto this thing, and go merrily along your way. And if you just think in hypotheticals all the time, you never have to be joined with reality. And then anything that doesn't work the way you expect in your head, you can blame on something. You could blame it on the government. You could blame it on the political process. You could blame it on economics, macroeconomics, any kind of unexpected event. Ancient aliens works. That's one that people use all the time. You can blame it on some, 9 guys in a dark room smoking cigars. Like, you can do all that. Those are all excellent hypotheticals, by the way. Hypothetically, I would have been right, but for these 9 guys in a dark room smoking cigars. Okay, I guess. Except you're completely insane and you probably need to be on some kind of medication. But this idea of objective material reality is pervasive. And science is relying entirely on it. Peterson talks about this. Jordan Peterson talks about this. He says, oh, science needs to be embedded in something. I mean, John Vervaeke talks about science needs to be embedded in something. Well, science is embedded in something. Oh, sorry about that. Let's kill this. Science is embedded in something, but it doesn't know what it is because it's trying to analyze the thing it's embedded in instead of accepting where it came from. And that's a big issue. Now they're exploring, using the science tools, using their own tools, the thing that's bigger than what their tools were designed to explore. Well, that isn't going to work. I can just tell you. It's not that you can't know something, right? You can't make some inference even, but that doesn't mean you can know the thing in any reasonable way. Your tools are relying on that context that allowed your science to exist. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go with these tools? They're not going to be able to give you that information, that answer. That's not going to happen. If that's your plan, you need a new plan. And the thing is, with objective material reality, you can always go, well, the information is this, and that can be a set of information that no one else has. It might be a set of information that was actually made up, because that's happened many times to me. People just make stuff up, and I'm like, yeah, but none of this is like Destiny. You would Destiny debate Peterson, and all he does is just throw out, statistics that are incorrect. Like they're just wrong. Again, I don't know what else. They're just wrong or imaginary pieces of data, and that's the thing about data. Data is imaginary information. Information covers all kinds of things, and lies are more of the information than anything else. Falsities comprise more information than non-falsities. I don't know what else to say. But you can always infer from the information available, this person must be thinking X or Y. But you don't know the information they have access to. You don't know. Maybe they know something you don't. Maybe you know something they don't. And that's all about the presumption that your context and interpretation of the information is the only one available, and everybody does or should see it the same way. When people say Piers Morgan can't ignore the fact that most crimes are caused by the immigrant population, they're wrong. Piers Morgan's experience is that zero immigrants do that kind of crime. That's his world. That's the world that he lives in because he's in a socioeconomic bubble or a straight up class bubble. Doesn't matter. In that bubble, rapes don't. No one goes down to assault little girls at the schools. Like none of those schools have that problem. And they're probably not going to. I mean, eventually, but it'll take a while, maybe. Hopefully it never happens, but the way things are going in the UK, who knows? So to assume that he sees the police statistics and interprets them the same way, as though police always tell the truth and are giving you a clear picture. Well, no one can give you a clear picture. The elites know this. You can't get a clear picture. Philosophers have been talking about this for thousands of years at this point. Oh, well, there's a little bias in everything. Well, maybe all the bias in the data on crime is actually due to racism. Okay. And the funny part is that was the claim in the South in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I'm not sure that claim was wrong, by the way. I'm just saying this isn't an unusual way to think about the world. It's something that has happened. Maybe Piers is trapped in that bubble because he's definitely trapped in that bubble. There's nothing you're going to be able to do argumentation-wise using pure information to shake him free of that. Because he's valuing his experience of these people over your crappy, abstract numbers that he doesn't have any experience with the numbers. No one does. They're numbers. 12. How was that? Was it good for you? It's good for me. You should look out for that pattern where people are telling you what other people think based on the fact that some information is available somewhere. But that's why no one understands Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes and why there is such a split between them. Their experience is different. You have two people from completely different classes who have never experienced anything of the other person's world at all. Seriously, at all, ever. Trying to talk. It ain't gonna work. I don't know what to tell you. There's whole songs and books written about this for decades and decades and decades. Like, why is this confusing? This should be the easiest thing in the world. And it's perfectly rational, as I pointed out in yesterday's live stream. And if you haven't seen that live stream, you can look at it here because I will post the link. And if you want to understand sort of, let's say, the larger issue of what I'm talking about with materialism and individualism and objectivism sort of coalescing to cause this confusion and this split with reality, because once you buy into one of them, you get the other two for free somehow. I don't really understand how and why that works. I mean, I've got some suspicions, but it's these things are hard to say. You can just check out this video. So, what are we to do? Well, the only way to have a proper, positive relationship with the things around you is to accept reality. When someone is unable to do this, the intimacy crisis rears its ugly head. Have you ever noticed this? Have you ever thought about, well, the meaning crisis means we can't connect to meaning. The meaning must be out there somewhere, especially if you have an objective material worldview, which most people seem to. Why are we unable to connect with meaning? Well, the ability to connect with things is technically a quality of a relationship that you lack. That is the intimacy crisis. And of course, I have a whole playlist for you there that you can choose to engage with if you want to understand more. The thing is, we need to be in the world, not merely thinking about the world, not hypothesizing about the world, not guessing about the world, not trying to figure the world out before we go into it. That's silly. We don't need to be sitting there looking for the perfect propositional explanation of the thing before we engage in the thing. That will never exist. Not for me, not for you, not for anyone that came before us, and not for anyone that will ever come after us. We don't need to be predicting the world, imagining the world. We don't need that. I'm not saying we don't need our imagination. We need that, but it needs to be informed by something. If you imagine dragons flying everywhere, that's not helpful because you're not going to run into that in the world. Manipulating the propositions, which are abstractions technically, right, about the world is not going to help us. Grow a bean, make a friend, put up with somebody impossibly frustrating for an hour. Mimic a new skill in someone else. Build something, really anything. Marvel at it, and then tear it down. Feel the full cycle of frustration, success, admiration, and subsequent loss. Because the world is cyclical. The world has cycles to it. That cyclicality gives you this sense for vertical causality. Jonathan Peugeot used that term today in his Q&A. Yes, the science idiots are onto something when they realize, oh, the problem is vertical causality. Yeah, the thing above science that allows science to do science. Yes, that is correct. Vertical causality is not a terrible scientific name for the thing you're pointing to. I can think of better names, but whatever. We can work with vertical causality. Actually, that'll work. That'll be close enough. But if you're stuck in this flat world, in this propositional world, because propositions keep us stuck in the flat world. If you need to know more about that, there is your link. If you're stuck in that flat world, you're never going to experience this vertical causality because propositions are flat. They are abstractions of reality that are useful for communication, but they're hardly the best form of communication. They're hardly the richest form of communication. That's why memes emerged, because we broke the language. Now we needed the memes because the language especially when it's broken up like this, cannot hold the concepts and ideas that we need to communicate. And if we're far away on the internet, well, what are we going to do? Sarcasm in text is very difficult to pull off if it can be done at all. And just because it can be done at all doesn't mean you can do it. You might suck at it. I don't know. Probably. Maybe there's forms of sarcasm that you can never do online. That seems likely. And this is why our understanding of mimicry is so important. That's why people like Rene Girard, because he's right about something. He's just wrong about more things than he's right about. At the end of the day, as I talked about with Mathieu Peugeot, that video is 7,700 and I think 94 views or something right now. It's doing gangbusters still. Amazing. Thank you everybody for watching it. Watch it again. Maybe we'll get it to 10K. You learn by doing, not by hearing, reading, talking, debating, conversing, discussing, interviewing, or arguing. You don't learn those ways. You might gain information, but gaining information and learning are not the same thing. These are flat engagements with a complex, enchanted, full, rich, cyclical, changing reality that we live in, that we were born into, that is all around us all the time. And all we have to do to engage with reality is get out of your head. Get a sense for where you end and other things begin. And it's not that these things, these hearing, reading, talking, debating, conversing, discussing, interviewing, and arguing are not useful. Obviously, I think they are. Look at what you are engaged in right now. However, they aren't the best, and they can only point poorly. Because ultimately, pointing isn't always seen the same by different agents viewing the same thing. In other words, people don't all hear me the same way. I can't tell you the number of times I've asked somebody to repeat what they heard, and they give me a sentence that contains 0 of the words, including prepositions, that I used. 0. And I'm always fascinated by this. I'm like, how did we get here? We're talking to in person too, not just online. This is not an online problem. It may be made worse by online because that's what technology is. It's a lever. It makes everything bigger. So if your instances are negative, you're going to have more negative instances faster. That's technology for you. 0 of the words. They actually couldn't replay a single word that I used back to me at all. Incapable. In the moment. Zero lag. Like right as it's happening. What sentence did I just say? What did you hear me say just now? And they do one sentence because I only did one sentence. 0 words the same. I'm still pointing at the same thing. And imagine if 2 people do that. I've had arguments with people where they were arguing back and forth about what I said while I'm there right after I said it. And I'm like, are you guys okay? Do you need some help? Like I can just try and explain it again to you instead of you 2 arguing that your views are not the same over what I said. Like we can kind of work with this, but not if you're going to fight, which is what they preferred, by the way. Does this sound like a familiar pattern that you see online every freaking day? Maybe not. I don't know what you're seeing. I can point at Twitter all day long. What do you see well, you don't even see the same thing. You're not even getting the same information on Twitter as I am. My feed's unique. Your feed's unique. That's not going to pull us together if everyone's getting different information. Oh, you get customized information. Great. Now I'm really split apart from everybody else. Fantastic. Yeah, I wonder what's causing all this. Huh. I don't know. I can't figure it out. It's too hard. If you cannot share a reality, then you cannot share anything in a useful way with anyone else. The reality has always been here for us. It's already here. We need only disengage from our own imaginal realm, our own imagination, and engage with the things that disagree with us. I gave you some suggestions earlier. I could point to some other things. And while we are not entirely sure that the storefront is correctly set up, I can also point you to my wonderful new book, which should be available for order. Even if it's not, I have all the orders, so we should be able to fix that problem if they're not going to the right place. So let us pause here and go through all of our comments. I did see some of them as I was ranting like a lunatic, but because my notes were literally being updated in the last minute, I was reticent to get off of my monologue train lest I lose track of my thread. This has not been the best week for me. Yesterday was busy. I got sick before my live stream, so I started it late. Luckily, that passed relatively quickly, thank goodness. And I stopped the live stream, got dressed, went to an event, very nice event actually, and then went after that went to another event. So it was a busy day, and I was tired after that live stream. Actually, I was tired before the live stream, but I made it. Merry Christmas. Yes, Merry Christmas to everybody, since I probably won't see you before Christmas. There's a possibility I could do another live stream, but one person who said, like, you want to do a live stream like last month has not. We just haven't. First time was my fault for sure. We haven't connected. I'm like, dude, where are you? So we'll try to get, and maybe he won't want to do a live stream, but I think that's what we did the last two times. So we'll see. Next on, the conspiracies will continue until enchantment improves. Oh, I like that. Wow. Don't show that to Castle. We are in the process of redoing the store. And so you will see new products on the store. They might already be there. I don't know. The store people are dealing with store things. Castle's doing an unbelievably good job, as always. Young God, is civilization not sufficiently anti-trade? Oh, yeah, versus Candace. Yeah, I already commented on that nonsense. You got to stop psyoping yourself. It's not good. Hello, Kurt. It's good to see you. Young God, the joke is if you make sense of reality, you find reality as something fungible. Yeah, I don't think that's a joke, but it's certainly true. What is it with all the double irony that people are trying to pull off poorly? Panda person, there's incentive for social media companies to create echo chambers. All right, let me put it this way. You can't avoid echo chambers. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what social media companies do. It doesn't matter what their intent is. So while you can say that there's an incentive, the incentive's irrelevant. It's going to happen. You're just not understanding how the world works. You're saying, like, the social media companies create echo chambers. No, they don't. People on social media companies or on social media platforms create echo chambers. And that also happens to be useful for marketing. And that is why they create a thing that allows for echo chambers. You know what else allows for echo chambers? Every other method of getting people together allows for echo chambers and creates and prefers echo chambers. I don't know what else to say. You guys can't blame technology for all this stuff. Technology is a lever. It doesn't change the world. It just speeds things up and magnifies them. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. Blaming companies for bad things. I mean, let's blame bad companies for bad things and only for the bad things that they do. And let's blame everything else for everything else. It'll just be a lot easier if we're not lying to ourselves about the world constantly, because then we'll be able to actually fix a problem. Okay. Let's suppose for a second that the social media companies have total control and they're incentivized to create these things, and they create these things. You're not going to fix it. Don't worry about it. Just move on with your life. Like, get off the social media things if you have to. It doesn't matter. But you're not fixing that. Talking about it, yelling about it, screaming about it, trying to vote for it is never going to change it or fix it or alter it in any way. You're just wasting your time, energy, and attention. Totally. By thinking about it. Social media companies make money from user engagement. Social media companies make money from advertising. Advertising can be facilitated by engagement, but that's not. They don't need that engagement, at least not in that way. Users engage with that which seems to confirm their pre-existing views and biases. Yeah, and that's always true. It's true for all marketing, by the way. All the marketing, which existed long before computers. It was always that way. It's always still that way. It's never going to be different ever, because these are human failings that you're talking about. And it turns out that we're all humans and we all have those failings. Good stuff, Ninja Denise. It's good to see you. I was watching part of your live stream, but of course I could not because I needed to write my monologue, which I was behind on. Materialism is self-contradictory. Well, no, it's just limiting. And like, substitute modernity for materialism. And the end of materialism is the realization that materialism cannot explain everything. And more importantly, it can't explain any of the important aspects of reality. That's the crisis. That's the thing they're blaming postmodernism for. And in terms of the postmodern so-called, but isn't at all, philosophical movement, I would call it a movement of intellectual corruption or something. That is true. However, it's still just materialism that's dying, right? Materialism has reached the end of the things it can explain. And now the things that are left that it needs to explain cannot be explained by materialism. And so there's no postmodernism or ultra meta modern, whatever gobbledygook, random Greek or Latin word thing. That's a nonsense way to talk. Don't listen to people that talk like that. They're full of nonsense. Has global poverty not decreased since Kant lived? What difference does it make? That had nothing to do with Immanuel Kant and his philosophy, for sure. There's no way you could link better food growth options on Immanuel Kant or even the wildly unpredictable success of the United States at feeding everybody. That had nothing to do with him. It happened in spite of his nonsense. And if that's your only measure, that's fantastic. But also, everyone's complaining. Seems like things have gotten worse. When Kant was alive, everybody wasn't complaining. No one was complaining about the things everyone's complaining about now. Seems worse. And you can always pick some aspect where things have improved or, in fact, gotten worse. That's really not an interesting trick, though, I think, because anybody can do it, including actual 3-year-olds. That might be a hint that this is not like the way to go with an argument. Like 3-year-olds making Karl Marx quotes inadvertently because they've obviously never read Das Kapital. It's a good hint that Karl Marx was not a good writer. It's not a hint that Karl Marx was right about anything, but it is a good indication that he was stupid and wrong about everything. I don't know. It only seems to go in one direction. It's asymmetrical. Yon God, I wonder if you can construct a grammatically correct sentence using only the words what if. Probably. Well, yeah. You can do lots of interesting things with grammar. These are very old things from the 70s and 80s that were published in magazines and played with by, the pseudo-intellectual class, unfortunately, and somewhat the intellectual class. But yeah, there's way too many. Hypothetically speaking, is Bitcoin anti-American? No, nothing is anti-American. That's ridiculous. Lynn, I watched a bit of Miss Owens today. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Lynn. Send me your address. I'll send you flowers. She stated that the American slave trade was owned by Jewish people. I thought the East India Company ruled the world. That is correct. When Jacob said she was anti-Semitic, I don't know. Well, look, all conspiracies are going to lead you in one direction eventually. I don't know what to tell you. If any part of evolution is correct at all, because the whole thing fails if genetic variation isn't real. So if any part of evolution works, is pragmatic, it can be useful in any context, genetic variation exists. And if genetic variation exists, some ethnicities are going to have, maybe it's only part of their ethnicity, an outlier group of highly intelligent people. That's a mathematical certainty within the model. I don't know why people don't talk about this. Probably because they're stupid. And those people are going to have an outsized effect on lots of things. All conspiracy theories will lead you to anti-Semitism eventually. All of them. Right. Because there has to be a thread. Wouldn't have to be a Jewish thread, but in this case, it seems to be. That's not my fault. Like, maybe they should stop doing stuff. And that's not the problem. The problem is taking credit for a group when one group member is doing something that seems to be good and disavowing that person, same person, as a member of the group if the winds change and they seem to be doing something bad. Anybody following that pattern is subject to a proper and thorough thumping from all other groups, because that is inappropriate behavior. You can't tell me one day that, oh, look at all the wonderful things we do, this person, and this person. And then the next day go, well, these people who are doing something bad, who are also in our group in some definition, we don't count them. Or, oh, these people that we looked at before, well, now we found out one of them's bad, and so they're really not part of our group. And they really never were because they did the bad thing. That ain't how it works. If you do that, you're going to create a problem for yourself. Either you manage your group and take credit for the group you manage and take responsibility for that group, or you F right off, because I'm not interested in you being sneaky about everything, because it's sneaky behavior, no matter who does it. People are sneaky all the time. They say one thing to one person and something else entirely to someone else about the same topic. I don't like that. No one likes that. And it's not to say there isn't a place and a time to do that. But when it's public and it's repeated and this pattern is over and over and over again, it's not a good look. You can't sit there and say, oh, we hate white people. And then when a member of your group starts gunning down white people, go, well, he isn't one of us. You can't do that. That ain't going to fly. No one's going to believe that. If people want to keep doing that, that's a problem. And conspiracy drives people crazy. And fake news virus scam, which had conspiracy elements to it, real and imagined, but not one conspiracies, many conspiracies, unfortunately. That drove people crazy. And when you have an event that's hard to explain, hard to understand, hard to wrap your head around, and you have a bunch of people with different theories about what happened, oh, Charlie Kirk was a Christian martyr. What? What definition are you using for Christian or martyr? And what is it that you think he did exactly? Are you saying that everybody who dies professing Christ publicly is a martyr? I don't understand. I mean, maybe, but like, who cares then? Then that's a Tuesday. Christians die every day who have publicly professed their faith. Like, that's a lot of martyrs. I don't know what difference that's going to make in the world if it's one more. And this is the problem. Kirk, Mark, you're a good alternative to debate bros like Andrew Wilson. Thank you. Actually, I love Andrew Wilson. I couldn't. I mean, I'm still on their Discord and stuff. I couldn't really get his attention. I could reach out to his wife again. She wrote some a wonderful paper. I should actually grab her book, but I just haven't had time to circle back around to the feminism thing. I mean, it's super important. I'm glad she's doing it. I hope she continues because she's also a monster force. But I couldn't convince those guys that they didn't know what debate was, although I didn't confront them with that. But I couldn't really convince them that maybe this isn't the best way to go. I did try. I mean, I engaged with them like a year ago now or something. And I still pop in there from time to time, and I like those guys. I mean, I like Andrew. Andrew's not only really good at what he does because he's really good at what he does, but he's entertaining. And some of it's a little childish, we'll say, or a little internetish, maybe. And I'm sorry, I grew up online. I've got an affinity for it. It's probably not the best, but oh well. I can make the same argument for Vander Clay. Vander Clay does a lot of things that I'm like, this is probably not good, but also I do enjoy it so much. So everyone's got their little guilty pleasures. I'm just a little bit more aware of what mine might be. I might be wrong about that. Who knows? Lynn, thanks, young God. That's the pattern she sees. Well, look, nobody knows what patterns Candace is seeing. Okay. Is she ignorant about something, or is she projecting something? If you're projecting something called Christian martyrdom, right? Or look, when I worked at Polaroid, and I worked at Polaroid like 3 different times in 3 different parts of the company, I would actually throughout the day go, how does this company make any money at all? Because I would see all the stupid things that were happening and all the money they're wasting. And I'm like, they can't be making any money. And then an hour later, I'd be usually in the film division, which made all the money for the company. And I'd be like, how is there any money left for anyone else in the economy? These guys are just printing money. Look at this. Because I knew, I mean, I researched it. Whenever I consulted, I researched. And whenever I worked somewhere, I didn't really research because I was like, oh, I'm going to work here. So I'll learn it as I go. I knew the prices and I was learning back then. I was really young, but I was learning the wholesale structure and how all that worked. And yeah, they don't sell it for anything near retail, right? But they're making it really cheap. So the cost to them and what they're selling it for, you're making a pretty hefty margin on that. And then I knew the engineers that built the machines that made the film, so I knew a bunch about the machines because I just freaking asked them. It's amazing. Just ask people. You ask professionals a question, they love to answer questions about their profession. So they would just tell me all these things. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so that's the that's the problem, right? That's the problem, is that the more detail you know about something, the more chaotic it seems to you. It could be good, it could be bad. Like, oh, there's infighting in the TPUSA organization. Really? Huh. I wonder what other organizations have infighting. All of them, as it turns. What a coincidence. So if you don't think of it backwards, in essence, you don't realize, no shit, there's infighting in the TPUSA organization. Yeah, there's infighting at the Daily Wire. There's infighting at CBS and CNN. And wait a minute, I'm noticing a pattern. This is not interesting information. And you can easily, with more information, floods you out and flattens the world. And then you have to put the world back together for yourself because you open the floodgates and let everything in, right? So what do? You make random connections because you don't have much of a choice, right? You don't have much of a choice. And then every flight that doesn't make any sense to you by a foreign country or whatever is part of whatever important event, because there's one important event, so everything must be connected to it because that's where your attention is. I guess these people have never gotten the trick. Whatever you do, don't think of a blue teddy bear. Right. And then there's all these people with like, it's controlled opposition, it's the Streisand effect, it's this, it's do you mean it that there's no such thing as bad press? Because that's a saying that's very, very old and conveys the same idea. Kirk, my understanding of materialism is the ideas everything is material. Ideas are immaterial. Okay, but that's again, like, can't use so-called philosophers' definitions of things because they're manipulating the world to be right. That's their whole, they're sophists. That's their whole ethos. No, materialism is, this is why John Vervaeke says, I'm not a physicalist or reductionist physicalist or whatever the hell nonsense he says, because he says it's not that I don't believe that non-material things exist. That would be a contradiction. That would be silly, right? So he just invents a new term to get out of the old term, but he never gets out of the cycle of preferring the material as the referent, as the primary mover or the primary reference for everything else. That's materialism. That's how people are describing and acting out materialism. That is how they're doing it. That's why I define it clearly, precisely, and accurately, because I'm not retarded, but they are. Let me be clear. Yes, I'm casting aspersions where they belong based on hard evidence that you can just look up yourself without me even getting involved and realize, oh, I see. I have some success with this. I remember it's probably about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. I went off on one of these Twitter posts that said, you know, Plato's cave means we can break out and blah, blah, blah. And I said, this is completely the opposite of what the allegory of the cave says. And one brave person said, no, that's not what it says. And I said, bro, go read it. And he did. And he came back to me on Twitter and said, oh my God, you're right. It's like, thanks. He didn't even watch my video on it, which I think I had at the time. Maybe I didn't, but whatever. He didn't even watch my video on it. He actually read the allegory of the cave and went, oh, Mark is right about that. And he came back and said, you're right. What do we do? And I said, there's nothing to do. It's fine. Relax. Plato wrote about it. We've known about this for over 2,000 years. I think it'll be fine. Like, it's cool. Panda person, capitalism decreased poverty. No, it absolutely did not. Capitalism is arguably an outgrowth of the Enlightenment. It certainly is not. Philosophy Kant advocated for. I don't see any evidence of that. Capitalism pre-existed the Enlightenment, so I don't want anybody's getting those arguments. That's just ahistorical for sure. It also depends how you define capitalism. This is one of those things, like, everyone is like, well, it's capitalism or communism or socialism rather. And I'm like, but socialism is a form of government and capitalism is a form of economics. So I don't know why you're comparing apples and oranges, but my God, are you comparing apples and oranges? Are you okay? Do you need some kind of medication or like what can we do for you? You seem to need some help. Like, I don't like now. The best definition that I have for capitalism that I have been able to come up with is simple. It is the free access to a standardized capital. And we don't have that the way you think, by the way, because if you actually just look it up, because I had to look it up today just to shove it in the face of my crypto friends, the gold in Fort Knox, if there is any, by the way, because I'm not so sure myself, is valued at $42.22 per troy ounce. This is where the concept of stable currency comes from, by the way. So it's actually very important that the federal government did this. I believe that hasn't changed since Bretton Woods in Bretton Woods 72. Right. And before that, the way that the US government prices gold, or the gold that they own, was set by FDR. Okay. So there's a form of capitalism in the United States, but I'm not sure capitalism works even the way, I think but it's basically the concept that the king's gold and your gold is worth the same, because historically the king owned all the things in the kingdom, irrespective of who found them or who put the work in to get them. Right. He was the steward of all material things. The church was the steward of all the non-material things, we'll call them. We're running into language problems. I understand that. Also, best I can do. And yeah, the problem with, as with all good philosophies, as Ixnon points out, true capitalism has never been tried. Man, I got to tell you, for the decades I've been using that line, because people go, true communism has never been tried. And I go, well, true capitalism also hasn't been tried. It's so priceless to see the look on their face when they realize that they have no argument. And it always works. It's worked 100% of the time. It's fantastic. I've used it hundreds, if not 1,000 times. It's wonderful. It's the best. You just take their formulation and you repackage it to make your point, and they're defenseless because they're stupid. That's how you know someone is stupid, right? When they make a symmetrical argument and it stymies them. It's like, well, maybe your argumentation sucks because it's symmetrical, and that means we're never going to make it anywhere, because true communism hasn't been tried and true capitalism hasn't been tried. There you go. Or true socialism, doesn't matter. True anything, right? Because you run into the quote no true Scotsman problem immediately, which is false, by the way. There's no the true Scotsman thing is highly misunderstood or misused. Yon God, wealth extraction. No, wealth gets created, not extracted. That there's no such thing as wealth extraction. Means that I drink your milkshake with a magic straw. That you cannot extract wealth. Wealth has to be created. This is the flaw in socialist systems. They just ignore that wealth has to be created, right? And it has to be maintained too. So you can't take wealth from someone who doesn't have any. And there's the main problem, and I do have videos on all this. They're all short, but all my videos on quote economics or whatever are short. There's a difference between wealth, cash flow, and capital, and there's different types of capital, right? There's a difference between these things, or what one aspect of capital, which is usually the way I talk about, is cash on hand. But capital is the correct term. Just that people in the middle class and below don't usually understand the concept of capital and probably never will. But they do understand cash on hand. Just cash on hand is one type of capital, right? And that's not the same as wealth. There's no overlap. And that's the problem. Oh my God, Kirk. Paul Krugman is a criminal and a liar. And I can just show you any number of Paul Krugman New York Times articles where he contradicts himself or just flat out lies. Yeah, don't ever listen to Paul Krugman. He is one of the biggest criminal liars, and probably the primary reason why Nassim Taleb in all his books pretty much wrote all economists are fraud, which he's backed off on since, by the way. He's now like most economists are fraud, because he met I think it was Dubner, who wrote Freakonomics. Levitt and Dubner wrote Freakonomics. I think Dubner's the economist, but maybe I got that backwards because I'm dyslexic, but whatever. He read Freakonomics or met those guys, and then he was like, oh, well, most economists, because Freakonomics, if you want to understand economics, you read Nassim Taleb and Freakonomics, you will understand economics better than anybody that has a degree in it. That's a guarantee. That's a complete guarantee. Young God, no true capitalism is my favorite Soviet Russia logical fallacy. Is that supposed to make sense? I don't think there's a Soviet Russia logical fallacy. Young God, you can take things and gain wealth. You can also take things and lose wealth. So if there's such a thing as negative wealth, no, there's no such thing as negative wealth, because the world is not symmetrical. Everybody keeps thinking the world is symmetrical. If you think the world is symmetrical, let me just clear this up. If you think the world is symmetrical and that the transitive property of mathematics applies everywhere, then you are not very bright and you should not think for yourself. I mean that very seriously and very technically. Please do not think for yourself if you keep saying, well, there's a positive and a negative of everything. That cannot be true, or you would not be in a world, period. Everything does not have an opposite. That is not true. Look up the definition of the word oppose and realize there's an agent involved in opposition. Opposition is not a feature of the world. It is the result of a perspective, right? Oppose means to set against. Who's doing the setting? Somebody, an agent. That agent creates the opposition. You remove the agent from the equation, not all agents, just that one, and the opposition vanishes because things are not set against one another. So everything does not have an opposite. That is a ridiculous statement. Couldn't possibly be true. If you tried to understand the world that way, you would get stuck in the Ouroboros, which eats its own tail. Oops. See that pattern anywhere? Kirk, isn't thinking for yourself consistently technically impossible? No. No. But there are certainly limits on your thinking, and the fact that you can think for yourself doesn't solve a problem. Because just because you can think for yourself doesn't mean you think correctly. I mean, thinking is a property with a quality that humans have, like the quality of human beings, like we can think. That's usually what people hold up, like, oh, people can think. Yeah, okay, I agree. Other creatures seem to be able to think too, by the way, but yeah, people can definitely think. So look, I think I'm all caught up. If you would like to jump in and ask me a question, or in fact, make an observation, that's fine. Or you can do it in the live chat and I can answer it here. And we'll see how much energy I have and how long I can go for, which is why I need some tea. Usually I cannot go as long if people do not jump in, but you're fine if nobody jumps in. I'll just go as long as I can. And then when I'm tired, I will end the stream. I am genuinely confused about why people go like, we can't know reality. And I'm always like, that's a you problem. That ain't a me problem. I ain't got that problem. I got other problems, but that ain't one of them. I really don't understand these people. I'm like, first of all, if you couldn't understand reality, why would you admit that to people? That sounds like you're ripe for, being indoctrinated into a cult that tells you I know reality. And I only say that because that's how people get indoctrinated into cults, by the way. They either sell some secret knowledge that makes reality make sense, or they sell you a coherent real world view that gives you a place. And that place may be at the bottom of their hierarchy even, but you'd rather have a place at the bottom than have no place at all. And that's one of those things people miss. Also, I just want to reiterate this because I've just been enjoying my little observation on this, and then I'll get right to your question, Kirk, I promise. If you want to radicalize somebody, just ignore the true observations and problems that they're seeing in the world. That will do it. You will never radicalize enough people by giving them radical ideas. Like that will never work. It reliably doesn't work. I can point to thousands of examples. Kirk, Mark, I'm curious as to your perspective that computer science guys should inform cognitive science guys. No, I don't think they should. I think the cog sci people should stop being lazy and read the existing research on this issue by the experts who pioneered it. I don't think the cog sci guys should get in. I mean, I don't think the computer science guys should get anywhere near cog sci. Cog sci is a complete catastrophe from a computer perspective. Haven't some cognitive scientists like Jean Piaget, not a cognitive scientist, Noam Chomsky, also not a cognitive scientist, influenced comp sci? No. They're too late. They're way too late. I went over this in the video. And they're not cog sci guys. That's too early for cog sci. Cog sci is a very recent discipline because it's a multidisciplinary thing. And I think all the multidisciplinary things started in the 80s, really. Some of them might have been thought of in the 70s, but they didn't even get going. So no, none of that actually happened. And that's the problem, is that cog sci guys are so arrogant. And the reason why these multidisciplinary sciences, which again, I have questions as to whether or not that can actually happen. I'm sure there are some instances where that can actually happen, right? But I'm not sure that they have a way to determine valid and invalid ones, for example. The issue becomes, okay, if you have this, why? Because, oh, I see, you went into psychology, it didn't give you the answers you wanted, so you went into some kind of neuroscience, or at least researched it and found out that also didn't answer the questions. And so you said, aha, more information is better. So I'm going to take this discipline and squish them together and maybe combine a discipline or two, right? Okay, that's ridiculous. This is all bad thinking. Like, this is all more information will solve my problem if I can just fill in enough blanks. It doesn't work reliably. That's the issue. The citations begin. No, they will not. Young God, Mark, how old were you when you first watched The Prisoner? 18. My buddy, Craig, introduced me to The Prisoner, his favorite show. He was an anarchist. After I got done with him, 4.5 hours, he was no longer an anarchist. Hasn't been an anarchist since, by the way. He was obviously older than me, had already graduated college, and Craig is like one of these unusual super geniuses. Like, freaking, the guy's ridiculous. Like, the fact that he exists actually still bothers me. I love him dearly. But like, the fact that anyone like that could exist bothers me. It just bothers me. Craig was reading a translation of Nietzsche when he was in college, I believe. And the translations are translations, right? So he said, well, screw this. This sucks. I don't trust this translator. I'm going to go learn German so I can read Nietzsche in the original German. And I was like, you did what? And he already knew Latin. And I'm like, who does it? I failed Latin. Like, I mean, I'm not horrific at Latin or anything, although I'm really rusty. But like, I failed Latin, man. Like, I can't. No, I am still going to blame the teaching method all day long because I've got good evidence that the teaching method was terrible. But whatever, I couldn't learn it on my own. I tried to learn Latin on my, like, French, forget it, whatever. I didn't care. But like, I have my Latin textbooks. They're not here. They're in the shed. I have my Latin textbooks. Like, I love Latin, so like, I couldn't learn it. This guy just is like, oh, I already know Latin. Let's just pick up some German so we can read Nietzsche in his original language. I'm like, are you okay, bro? And he probably did it in like no time because that's what he's like. He's an insane creature. Like, I mean, you could say he's human, but I'm like, but humans aren't like that. Like, humans suck compared to him. He's amazing. Also, I haven't seen him in a while, but he's telling me about his new project. He's a software engineer, and among other things. But he goes, "Oh yeah, we're building this interface for this thing on the tablet." And he grabs his tablet and he goes, "Yeah, look what I wrote." And of course, he clicks on it, doesn't work at all, and like errors out. And I'm just looking at him like, "This is why no one trusts software engineers, dude. You didn't test it." And he's like, "Oh, what? I thought I had it working." I'm like, "Yeah, 7 builds ago, I'm sure you had it working once, and then you kept adding features because I'm not going to get into all my professional experience." It is a riot. I will say, quite honestly, I never made those mistakes because there are reasons. There are reasons. Being a perfectionist helps. So yeah, my buddy Craig introduced me to The Prisoner, and I've been a fan of it ever since. I have a map of the village. I will get it because I bought the 25th anniversary something like that. There was an edition on DVD, and I bought the whole stupid thing, of course. It is the or was until Breaking Bad. It was the considered the best TV series ever made, even though it's barely one season by U.S. standards. I think it's 17 episodes or something, right? Depending upon which, as always with these things, right? Don't watch it on Prime. They have the order wrong. It's pissing me off because I'm watching it now with Sarah, and just like it's annoying me. The order doesn't matter that much, but also theirs is clearly incorrect, and it just bothers me. I should have gotten my DVDs out of the shed, but the shed's still a bit of a mess. I gotta buckle down on that. Now it's Christmas. I can't do anything in the house because Christmas lights are up. We're not gonna tear down all the Christmas lights just so I can fix the bookcases and fill them full of books. All right, Kirk. Mark, if Piaget's and Chomsky's work doesn't count as cognitive science, then what does? Okay, the discipline didn't exist, so it couldn't count as cognitive science. Piaget, as far as I can tell, is straight up psychology. So, insofar as psychology is one of the many disciplines inside cog science, I guess, but no. Okay, and Chomsky's an idiot, and he's just wrong about half his stuff. So using Chomsky for anything is like, are you okay? Like, seriously, you just listen to what Chomsky says. Like, Chomsky's a clown, and Chomsky's doing this to you knowingly. Watch his face when he makes his stupid statements. He has a smirk. Is that smirk? That freaking smirk gives these people away. Rene Girard does it too. If you watch Foucault, I think there's stuff on Foucault out there. Foucault does the same smirk. It's all the same smirk. They know that. You know who else does it? Slavoj Žižek does it. Right? Not on everything, but when he's screwing with you, he gets a smirk on his face. He gets that self-righteous, dripping with arrogance smirk. This is what bothers me. I'm like, really? You're not noticing the smirk? That you're missing that? It's a facial expression. It's clear as day. It's 100% consistent. It's 100% correct. Every single time somebody says something and does that stupid smirk, bang, you know they're screwing with you. You know they're screwing with you. 100% of the time. Chomsky's work is garbage. Chomsky is one of these guys who plays with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis and thinks he's got some way of understanding this. And like, he's just wrong. Like, he's self-contradictory. So no, I don't think all the constituent people that CogSci claims to be borrowing from, whether they're actually doing that or not is an interesting question too, Kirk. Like, do they actually use any of Chomsky's work, or Piaget's for that matter? Or do they use parts of it and like pick and choose? And then if you're picking and choosing, are you actually using the person's work? Or are you butchering their work to fit your own conceptions? Because I got questions, that's all. I just got questions. It might be okay, I don't know, but I got questions. Like, I want those freaking questions answered. And if you can't answer them, I'm suspicious of you immediately. That's all. That's all. I'm not saying you're wrong or you're right. I'm saying I can't believe you if you can't back up what you're doing with some sort of justification. Doesn't mean you're right or you're wrong. It just means I'm out. I'm out. You got to justify what you're doing. What's your motivation even? Do you even know? So no, I'm not going to sit there and say, I mean, Freud's a cognitive scientist, I guess. And so is Carl Jung then. If Piaget is, like, why not? It's just that they weren't. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, they clearly weren't. Everything is so meta only if you misuse the word, but if you don't actually say meta, then things are not. I agree. Chomsky is a clown. Just reference him because I heard he influenced Cogs. Everybody who is in the disciplines that CogSci claims influenced CogSci by definition. This is not an interesting claim. And analytic philosophy. Probably analytic philosophy is retarded. So retarded guy definitely made an impact with the retard club. Sure, absolutely. This isn't really interesting though, dude. Yes. I mean, again, the point that Immanuel Kant like changed a bunch of things. Well, for the intellectual class, sure, but it's not like Immanuel Kant changed them all in exactly the same way for exactly the same end. That's the problem. How old is Cogsci in your understanding? I thought I put this in my video, but I will just bring it up right now because for some reason, dude, you don't know how to Google that. But I actually do know how to use the Google. Do you guys remember the Let Me Google That For You webpage? Was that not a hint about the problem? We have the information in the palm of our hands now, which I was promised. I said, oh, they said, when everybody has the information available to them, we'll have a better world and we'll all agree. And what happened? The opposite. The actual exact polar opposite happened. That might have been a hint. Cognitive science. So this says it began as an intellectual movement in the 1950s. Okay. So there's no science called cognitive science in the 1950s because that is an intellectual movement. The term cognitive science was coined by Christopher Lawton Higgins in his 1973 commentary. So we're already at 1973. In the 70s and early 80s, as access to computers increased, artificial intelligence research expanded, blah, 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 blah. Marvin Minsky, blah, 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 blah. Lisp. Oh, Lisp is wonderful. Symbolic AI. Symbolic AI is cool. But symbolic AI is before the 70s, so I don't know why they're adding it in here. See, this is what I mean. They love to mess with the timeline and just borrow shit from the past and say, oh, we had this all along. You didn't have that at all ever. So yeah. Cognitive science is an interdisciplinary field with computers from various fields like psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, the philosophy of mind. That's not a scientific field, by the way. Computer science. It doesn't borrow anything from computer science. It doesn't even have a definition of intelligence. But you know who does? Computer science. Von Neumann does. That was what, the 40s? Something, maybe the 30s. How old is von Neumann? I forget. Anthropology, there's a non-science. And biology. Sure, biology. They don't borrow anything from computer science. I'm sorry. What they're doing is they're taking AI. And again, as I pointed out in my video on this, you can't take a poorly informed model and then use that again to re-inform the thing it's a model of. That's self-referential. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? That's not the way that works. So yeah, basically CogSci starts in like the 1980s. That's just when it became a scientific discipline. Right. And you can just see them rewrite history with, oh, well, there was an intellectual movement in the 50s. What? What are you talking about? There are intellectual movements every day. Like, what nonsense is this? The term hadn't even been coined until the 70s. And there's still no science. A science like is not just I used a term and therefore there's a science now. That's not how that works. Like, why is this hard? I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why you couldn't go on Wikipedia. Remember, Wikipedia is full of lies, not on certain things, but on most things, and just read the nonsense that they put forth. Oh, well, CogSci isn't as old as the 1950s because the term didn't even exist until the early 70s. And then when was it actually performed? And they couldn't have included computer science because they don't use the computer science definition of intelligence. And granted, there's more than one and they compete, but still, like, this isn't that hard to figure out that you're being psyoped here. This CogSci thing is a giant psyop. You guys talk about psyops and you fall for all the psyops. And I'm like, oh. And then you make up new things that aren't even psyops. And I'm like, there's got to be like a medication we can give people for this. Yawn God, lol, retarded guy definitely made an impact with the retard club. It's such an epic line. Thank you. Well, you should tell everybody that. It's great. I was watching a doc about comsci techie cults. Comments? Yeah, when you're a materialist and you're in computer science, you're going to get involved in cults more often because you don't have a grounding. Computers doesn't ground you to anything. Materialism doesn't ground you to anything. Philosophy doesn't ground you to anything. That's the problem. As much as I love Ayn Rand, and I actually love Ayn Rand, she doesn't ground. It's not a philosophy. She doesn't ground you to anything. I don't even think most of her stuff is correct. That's not even the issue. It's not about right or wrong. Almost everything she says is correct, but it doesn't ground you to anything. It doesn't give you any solutions to anything, and it's only helpful for a certain type of person. Otherwise, don't read Ayn Rand. It'll ruin your life for sure. Like all other so-called philosophies, none of which are philosophies, right? And this is easy, right? So, is this a philosophy? I don't know. Does it account for children? Because Plato does. Immanuel Kant doesn't account for children. Nietzsche doesn't even know what children are. Ayn Rand famously doesn't understand children. That's why there's a freaking awesome Simpsons episode. Shoot, I used to know the name of it. But anyway, Maggie goes to daycare, and the name of the daycare is a daycare center. And I just about died laughing right then and there. I think I almost wasn't with you here to do these live streams, because that to me, that was the pinnacle of amusement at the time. And it's still a daycare center. Freaking classic. They really understood the deficit. And it's a common deficit that people point out for Ayn Rand. What I realized when I heard that critique of Ayn Rand initially is I said, okay, let's pick a random philosopher. Heidegger, same problem. Kierkegaard, same problem. Nietzsche, do you get it? Immanuel Kant, same problem. They all have this problem. But then I realized that, oh, wait a minute. Also, Ayn Rand doesn't account for all these other types of people. They're not integrated into her philosophy. And so it's not a philosophy, at least we'll say in the quote modern philosophy sense. It doesn't rise to that occasion. That was before I sort of figured out, oh, wait a minute, we're just using the word philosophy completely incorrectly post Aristotle, basically. And actually, we should use the ancient Greeks' conception of philosophy and stop this madness of trying to replace religion with something that looks more like science, which is all they're doing when they use the term. Anyway, that Simpsons episode is great. You know, I know somewhere in my billions of files from back in the day, I have like the name of that episode and you know which season it's from and all that. But it might even be called Maggie Goes to Daycare. See what happens when you get old? Don't get old. That's the one. I keep telling people this, and no one follows that advice, and I it's very frustrating. So the best advice I give, no one ever follows it. I don't know why. It's confusing. It's very confusing. Kirk, to my understanding, cogsci is a bigger replication crisis than other sciences. Yet all the interdisciplinary and so-called soft sciences have replication crisis. 80% would be a generous number. It's more like 98% for those clowns. The hard sciences hold that number back. This is what happens when you do bad data science and you sample your data incorrectly, right? So it just turns out if you sample the data correctly, in other words, you differentiate between hard sciences and soft sciences. The soft sciences are unreplicable for the most part. There are some exceptions to that. Let me tell you the most interesting exception to that. There's a guy, I don't know if anyone's heard of him, although he is on the internet. I think he has an internet channel somewhere. He's called Jordan B. Peterson. Very replicable. He's in the top 1% of scientists, and he was, even by citations, he was in the top 1% of scientists in his field, which is psychology, before he got famous. He is a top tier performer. You have to give the guy that. Like this is one of the reasons why I like him, because he actually pulled off in the corrupt sciences and managed not to be corrupt. And he went to Harvard, and he's still not a crappy human being, which is amazing, because Harvard really does just suck the ethics and morals right out of you and replace it with pure evil somehow. I watched it time and time again. I was always like, wow, They should like patent this process. This is amazing. Also bad, but like amazing. I watched people go through Harvard and they were perfectly reasonable, good, kind human beings in the beginning. And 2 years in, bang, forget it. They would cut your throat just to have a laugh. I mean, these people were vicious. They couldn't get anything over on me because if you haven't seen Good Will Hunting, and I suggest you do, I can't do what Will does. And I'm not claiming I have an eidetic memory like that. I never did. But also, I've called out Harvard guys and said, I know you're from Harvard and I know what year you're in, because that is a trick that people in Boston could do. It wasn't that hard because if you're around Harvard, you can figure it out real quick. The pattern's pretty clear, actually. Not precisely, you read this book and then you're going to read this book. No, none of that. I can't do that. I didn't read those stupid books. Thank goodness I didn't read those books. The problem with reading books is that now you've got that in your head. And if it's wrong, it's very hard to get out of your head. Just saying. That's why I didn't read those books. Thank goodness I'm dyslexic. I just didn't read a bunch of books. It's great. Yawn God, I mean, like personal stories while in the belly of the beast. Yeah, well. Because, people at least peripherally, and so gossip is a thing or something. I'm a Muppet. You are a Muppet. But you're good at being a Muppet. Kirk, if you're a fan of Ayn Rand, I'd recommend looking into the ideas of Sir Isaac Berlin. He's a better historian of ideas. Ayn Rand's not a historian of ideas. She comes up with her own ideas. And they're very good for a certain type of person. Not you, by the way. Certainly not. Or Young God. Like, don't read Ayn Rand. It's not going to help you. The replication crisis is bad in theoretical physics. No, it's, again, if you sample, well, first of all, theoretical physics is not an entirely hard science, hence the word theoretical physics. That should have been a hint, Kirk. But anyway, no, it's not even close to that bad. I think the problem is if you go with, Sabine Hassenfelder actually covers this, right? She's talking about the particle physics stuff. And she says, listen, and particle physics, I think she says, is settled in the 1930s, something like that. And nothing new has been discovered since, or very few nothing new that interferes with the original theories from the 1930s, right? She says all the new stuff has been fantasy to get funding to try out a new idea. So, I mean, you could argue that's all going to suffer from the replication crisis. I would argue, well, I guess, but I would say that's actually an invalid measure, right? Like as a data scientist, I'd throw that data out. I'm like, well, they were trying new ideas and their ideas weren't replicable. And so they're not part of the science. That's fine. I would say if the stuff is cited and then conclusions are drawn from that citation and it's never replicated and shown at the time to be, non-replicable, then it's part of the replication crisis. Another way to think about that is what it means is the scientists were lying to you all along and the things they were calling science weren't science, because I would argue if you're following the scientific method, and you should, then you can, Karl Popper me all day long. I really don't care. We have to be talking about something and they have to have a definable method. Otherwise, we're not talking about something and we can't put a label like science on it because that would be inappropriate. So if you follow the scientific method, it's not science until it's been replicated. So all the things that weren't replicated and they were using and calling science means they're frickin' liars. It doesn't mean anything else. I'm sorry, but like that's one way to resolve the problem and say, no, there's no replication crisis. These people are just unrepentant liars. Okay, I'm down with that too, because they lie about a lot of stuff. So them lying also about their experiments is like 0% surprising to Mark. Like whatever, they've been lying about everything all along anyway. So who cares? Now, that didn't used to be true, right? Obviously, at some point, the sciences were doing some good work, but maybe all the low-hanging fruit is gone, and that's the problem, right? That could easily be the problem. And this is why we don't know reality, because when you corrupt science and you count on science to give you things about reality and they turn out to be a bunch of big fat liars, you don't know reality and you don't know who to believe. Do you believe the guy who says I am science? Because he says he's the science. Like, my goodness. And it's like, no, because he was part of the AIDS epidemic scam. And then he's part of this fake news virus scam. And it's the same scam done in the same way by the same guy. And had you been sciencing, you would have noticed that. So apparently you science people don't know how to science, because that was obvious. Should have caught that one, huh? Yeah, they can't catch anything. So if you can't predict that, what good is whatever you're doing? I could predict that, by the way, but no one listens to me, so it's fine. I like how my friends are all freaking out. So for years and years and years, my friends would just ask me about something. I'd be like, oh, yeah, this is going to happen this way at this time. They'd be like, how do you do that? And I'm like, how do you not see this? And so starting around fake news virus scam, they were like, we're really afraid. Let's ask Mark, And I'm like, huh? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, bro, we're in Chaosville. Like, nobody can predict this. And they're like, ah. And I'm like, well, sorry. I know my limits. Like, nobody can predict what's going on now. They ain't no one that smart. That's like, chaos sucks. You can't make any predictions. And that's still where we're at. We're still in Chaosville. Like, we don't even know what reality is anymore. Man, when I was growing up, everybody knew what reality was. Now no one knows what reality is. I don't know. It's not that hard. You live in reality. It's not a secret. It shouldn't be a secret. It shouldn't be a mystery to anybody that Piers Morgan doesn't live in the same part of reality as Nick Fuentes. Like, well, of course they don't live in the same part of reality. How many wealthy people like spend their time, stalking young girls at poor people's schools in England? I don't know. Probably just close to zero anyway. And if they do, they don't get caught. The only ones that get caught are the poor ones. Yeah, it's just it really bothers me that we're in this situation where people are like, I don't know what reality is. We can't know reality. It's like, speak for yourself, son. Or as my mother used to say, what we, white man? It always cracked me up. What we, white man? Or white boy. She'd say white boy, so that was even funnier. And the fact that there is a disconnect. Like, the fact that you would say, we can't know reality. Like, you're speaking for me. Isn't that a little arrogant? Nobody? I had a discussion with my new buddy on the Discord server, a young kid. Not that young, but, younger than me. And he's so confused. You all are. It's not a generational thing entirely, but also it's more prevalent in certain generations for sure, but it's not generational. He was very confused, and we were talking about like, things like IQ are BS and they don't correlate to anything, and he just didn't know about this stuff, and I'm like, fair enough, but also, and it's interesting, right? You talk to people and they don't know about these differences in class. They don't know about these, like, I grew up knowing this stuff. It was obvious too. They don't know about this, and they're stunned to learn that people are speaking for others. And he was on the empathy train, and I had to get him, no, empathy is evil. Like, the idea is arrogant. Like, you can't, unless you're a mother with a child under the age of 5, you can't have empathy. That's insane. You're saying you have all your feelings about it and somebody else's feelings about it, and you're not them. You don't even have their perspective. And it took me a while. It took me like an hour, but I explained it to him and he got it. So, Kirk, to my understanding, things like geometric unity, oh my God. Please shoot me. Just shoot me now. Proposed by Eric Weinstein, who is a clown. And string theory, oh my God, yeah, string theory is worse, are unreplicable Well, string theory doesn't have any experiments. String theory is not a theory and it's not a science because it's not even a hypothesis because it has nothing testable about it because it's trying to say things about things that are so much larger than us that any test we could conceive of would not be explanatory of whatever they think the test is explanatory. Even though they try unifying, like, who's to say that Einstein's special relativity is supposed to be unified with quantum physics? Like, why is this a goal? Does anybody ever ask that question? And what are they unifying? They're unifying the math. Here's the problem with the math. Who cares? Like that you can do that. Like one of the ways they try to unify this is this thing called dark matter. Well, guess what? You can do that easier than with dark matter and dark energy by just using modified Newtonian dynamics, which is called MOND. MOND theory has been around since like the 60s or 70s, I forgot. And MOND is a better way to explain the things that dark matter explains. And MOND is reasonable. Like MOND's like, oh yeah, well actually MOND is eminently sensible given what we know of the world. These people who think like we're effectively what they're doing, Kirk, is they're trying to resolve the Big Bang. You're not going to resolve the Big Bang. Okay. That's not going to happen. There's a reason why physics hit a limit on understanding the Big Bang. The early physicists knew this would happen and they were unsurprised. And they were only surprised in how much progress they were able to make. Like, you got to remember, physics is the field that went, hey, you know what? We don't know why there's more matter than antimatter in the universe, because according to our calculations, where we started from 0, they should be equal out. And I'm like, I'm sure you used a Gaussian curve and started from 0. And then when you did all your clever math, you realized it all comes back to 0. And then you went, hey, wait a minute. It can't be 0 because we're here. That disqualifies you from having an IQ of any kind, unless there's a negative IQ. Maybe there's imaginary IQ. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe IQ is actually imaginary numbers, and these people are really stupid because, my God, that was the dumbest mistake. I found that mistake when I was like 15, and I went, what? You can't have started from 0 and use Gaussian calculations and not figured out you were going to end back up at 0, and that wasn't going to explain the fact that anything existed, but it was going to raise the question, how does anything exist? That was the mistake you made. That was the entire field of physics, of particle physics. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. These people are dumb, because that's dumb. I'm sorry, but like, I can't do math, but I know that's dumb. Like, good Lord, like, save us all from being too stupid to breathe. These people are morons. Why would these things need to be unified? Why? What do you think the outcome of that is going to be? Do they ever tell you? Hint, they don't. They just say they can do it, or that they need to do it, or that doing it is good. And it's like, well, why? I don't understand it. Quantum physics is useless to figure out anything that exists in the realm that you can grab. Anything. Or see, for that matter. Now, there are some quantum effects that we can, experience in some limited way, but we don't know they're quantum effects, and they're fringe effects, and they're rare, and who cares? Right. Newtonian dynamics explains all the things that you have control over on the planet Earth. Why do we need to change that? And then that's not to say, well, you shouldn't do quantum physics. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever, I guess. But also, what are you doing? You got to remember a few things. So again, when I was at Polaroid, my director was a very smart man. He said, oh, we're rewriting physics all the time. And I was like, what? What do you mean you rewrite? What are you talking about? What are you, a lunatic? You don't rewrite physics. Like, so what's this guy talking about? And he goes, well, yeah, our chemists, and we had the best battery technology in the world was at Polaroid Corporation. We had chemists in the battery division and the film division that were doing things in chemistry that, according to physics, wouldn't work. And then they would go back to the physicists, because Polaroid came basically out of MIT. They had a bunch of buildings on MIT's campus, basically, or at least inside the campus, not like, oh, this is our building and MIT buildings are surrounding us, sort of thing, right? So some of the labs were there. So they'd go over to the physicists and say, hey, come here, check this out. And they'd be like, oh, wow, this chemistry has implications for particle physics. Well, yeah, of course it does. So it was the engineers doing the tests and the work that were rewriting the physics. I'm just saying. That's how it works. Because to my understanding, both special relativity and quantum physics are our best theories in physics. Yeah, so what? But they contradict in extreme conditions. Yeah, that just means you need a third explanation and not just two. That's what that means. I don't know what to tell you. Yon God, that is not your understanding, because you just asked to define to understand. Shut up, Yon God. Stop being a jerk. Kirk, Mark, well, I disagree with Eric on some things. I think calling him a clown is a bit much. Watch my video on his stupid freaking presentation at ARC, and then it's not a bit much at all, okay? Doesn't he have some interesting critiques of academia? No, he doesn't, okay? Do you know why? Because he's a clown and a hack, and he'll do anything for attention. And so he's always late to every party. And he loves to make statements. And I cottoned on to him a long time ago, before even the Discord disaster. And this is the thing, when you know something about Eric, you know he's a clown, because you've seen what he's done. And what he's done is reprehensible and clown-like. And people who have had direct interactions with Eric on his Discord server, for example, back in the day on the Portal Discord server, can confirm all this for you. Okay, but I'll tell you how I knew. Because Eric, I think it was a video in 2010, maybe 2011. I forget. I can't find it again. Big surprise. YouTube is a mess. I don't know where he was giving the talk. He gave a talk on the 2008 housing crisis. And the basic thesis of his talk was, had you listened to us super smart scientists, math guys, the 2008 housing crisis wouldn't have happened. This is so wrong. It should be criminal, and he should be locked up. A ridiculous statement. Okay. Unlike a bunch of people like Nassim Taleb and I think Peter Schiff and a bunch of other people, he did not, before 2008, say the housing crisis was going to happen. But a bunch of people did. Geometric unity was oddly unable to predict that. So I don't believe him. His ideas about what went wrong in 2008 are wrong. I know, because I did hundreds of hours of research, legal research. So you say, oh, it's legal research. Okay, the thing about the law is that you have to publicly disclose paperwork. It's not subject quite so much to fraud. It's not subject to someone's analysis of a spreadsheet. You can just look at the freaking documents and do the math yourself, because it's all basic arithmetic on mortgages. If somebody starts talking about derivatives, okay, that's great. Is the basic math right, though? Because the derivatives aren't going to work if they're lying about their assets. If you don't think they were lying about their assets, you can look up Taylor, Bean, and Whitaker. And oddly, last night, I found out the last half to how they were pulling off the mortgage scams from somebody who used to work at Countrywide Mortgage. And he told me. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, nope. And some people took advantage of this. And I said, I guess they did. Well, that explains why they never ran out of money the way I thought. And he said, yeah, it's really funny. I always thought they'd run out of money quicker too, and they never did. And I'm like, yeah, now it makes sense how they were able to get away with it. So now I know the last piece. I'm probably going to cry about it every night. So there you go. So no, his critique of academia is too little, too late. He's riding on the coattails of others, as he always does, as I point out in my critique of his ridiculous ARC speech, which, look, that's an Eric problem for sure, but ARC published it. And I was like, are you guys, like, are you all on the same whatever drug? Because why would you publish this? It doesn't make Eric look good, and it doesn't make ARC look good. That's for sure. Like, why would you think to publish this trash? This is trash. And I do have a question out to somebody who is at ARC to answer to validate my conclusion at the end about the audience. And that person was there, and I asked him to watch that video and let me know if that conclusion was correct. And I hope he does. I should reach out to him actually. Maybe I'll do that after the stream and ask him, hey, did you get a chance to watch that? Because I would like to know, because look, I wasn't there. I'm going on my idea of what the audience looked like from what little clips are in the video. And it's very subjective, right? And I said that in my video, by the way, because unlike Eric, I'm not an arrogant piece of garbage human being. But Eric is. That is provable. I have so many stories, and I can point you at the people who went through things with Eric. So now I'm going to critique Eric all day long because I know what he's doing, and he's a scumbag. And it's just that simple. And I'm very sorry that he's a smart scumbag, but he's still a scumbag. That's why the IDW label never stuck, because he's a jerk. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was trying to perform a magic trick, and it didn't work because he's terrible at mimicking things. Terrible. But you talk to him, he's the greatest person ever. Probably not a coincidence, Kirk. Probably not. All of his critiques of academia were stolen from other people, because that's what he does. He steals other people's work. And that's well documented. He doesn't like hearing it, and we know that, but also absolutely does that in all of his stuff, including his so-called physics. And that's the problem with him. So if you want to idolize him, you can do that. If you want to idolize him because Jacob knows him and Jacob likes him, you can do that too. Okay? But I wouldn't. Not after what he did to all those poor people on the Discord server. Like, my goodness, what a complete jerk. He is such a horrible human being. It's kind of unbelievable. He's one of those guys, right? So he was managing hedge funds for Peter Thiel. And he's online telling people, oh, yeah, housing's unaffordable. I can't afford a house. You're managing a hedge fund for Peter Thiel, and you can't afford to buy a house? Is the moon made of green cheese too, Eric? Like, how stupid do you think people are exactly? Do you mean you can't afford a penthouse in New York City? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's ridiculously disingenuous. It's not even worth commenting on at some point. This guy is a narcissistic, psychotic lunatic for real. Like, he's got issues, man. Watch it. Watch his interview with Riley Reid from a few years ago on his channel. That body language is amazing. It's just like, just watch it. Unbelievable. Such a scumbag. Mark, people like Eric and Chomsky who think they're right about everything are usually wrong about most things. Yeah, well, they are. They're arrogant. Like, this is the one thing I wish people had that they don't have is an understanding of what arrogance is. And in particular, the difference between arrogance and confidence, because it's really important. Like, Jordan Peterson is confident, and I've never really seen him be arrogant. I mean, there might be one or two instances because whatever, everybody makes mistakes and things happen and whatever. But Peterson has a confidence about him, and it changes based on what he's talking about. And that is something you can rely on because it's cyclical. Eric's completely confident, although I read it as arrogance because I can tell the difference about everything. It doesn't matter what he's talking about. It could be the 2008 housing crisis. It could be particle physics. It could be the crisis of academia. It could be anything. It could be you know, getting off the planet. Like, seriously, watch my critique video, man. Talk about laying out patterns. And maybe I did a crappy job. I think I did a good job on that particular video, but and maybe it's not my best critique video or anything, and maybe I didn't lay out the patterns as well as I did in other videos. Whatever. It's a little harder when you're, some things are harder, some things are easier. It's a little harder when it's somebody else because you got to guess some of the patterns. And so watch that video and let me know. Like, actually comment on the video and say, no, I understood this, or no, I didn't see that, or can you explain this? Because I can't do that video again because actually Sarah, my video editor, has pretty much told me I don't ever want to hear that guy speak again because of the way he talks and the things he says in that one video. I can't expose her to any more of that. And actually, I can't expose myself to any more of his nonsense because I know his game. I know people like Eric. I've known them from MIT for decades. I met them when I was young, like 8. And again and again and again, because that archetype, that pattern of person is there at MIT. And this is why, and I have a video on the fall of academia, basically, right? This is why that's important, because when you open the world up to people like that, they can be easily fooled and think, oh, Eric's an expert and he's so smart because he can process a large amount of information with a high degree of recall and put it together in a coherent way. Okay, lots of people can do that. Most of those people are called conspiracy theorists, by the way. And the reason you don't call Eric that is just because he stays within the science frame and has arrogance, not confidence. And I'm not saying it's easy to tell the difference between confidence and arrogance. I wouldn't know. It's easy for me. That's all I can tell you. It takes me 4.5 picoseconds or something. Like, it's just built into me. But I grew up around it. Like, I have a lot of experience. And you got to understand the context. My stepfather had an unrecorded IQ. So people go, oh, Eric's really smart. And I go, Eric's a drooling idiot compared to my stepfather. My stepfather was actually brilliant. Like, it's not conceivable by humans at all, any of them. There was never a question I asked him that he didn't have some way to point me to an answer. And sometimes, like, I had to do the work, which that's the correct answer. You look it up yourself, asshole. Because if you don't look it up yourself, you ain't gonna believe the other person anyway, or you will and you'll be in a cult. It's up to you. You can listen to other people and be stuck in a cult, or you can just, like, get the material, the pointers, and go, whatever. And there's exceptions to that. Like, I was like, can't do math, right? So I was like, well, I want to write a program that draws a perfect pentagram inside a perfect circle on a screen, because it's not perfect because computers, math, blah, floating point, blah, 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 precision. And he sat with me and showed me how to do it. And I had to do all the typing, right? That's the way to do that. If you're not typing in programs from a piece of paper, you're not learning to code. I'm just going to tell you that right now, right? This guy was really smart, and he was able to explain all kinds of unbelievably complex things to me in a way that was understandable by me when I was a teenager, basically. And afterwards, thankfully. But that skill is so rare. Almost no one can do that reliably. Almost no one. Very few people can do that. There's a few people that I know who are really, really smart, who are MIT grads and things like that, who know me well enough to know how to explain things to me. And that's fantastic. But generally, I have to learn things on my own. So this is the problem with people like Eric, is that I know people smarter than them, and I know how much smarter people can be than they are. And so I know the difference between a charlatan with a PhD and somebody with a PhD who actually knows what the hell they're talking about. And there are some, quote, tricks to that, or shortcuts to understanding that. And not everybody can use them, which is fine too. But these are skills I'm telling you I have from direct experience. You don't have to believe me. I don't care. It's my YouTube channel. I got the YouTube channel, and you got comments. Kirk, given you recommend people participate in the real world, how frequently do you go to church? I don't talk about my personal engagement with churches. I don't find that relevant to anything really. I know guys like Peugeot will say like, go to church. It's like, oh, I don't. That's not a solution. It may work for crisis of faith people who just need to get back into a church, and that's good and valuable for them. And I hope they do that. That would be wonderful. Uh, and that's one form of participation. But you know what? People that just participate by say, and this is a phenomenon that I've seen many times. They just participate by say going to church and then being a bog standard materialist. They just become mystics. That's what happens to them. They become mystics. They become all floaty in the world because their participation is too high and they don't have any middling participation. Grow a bean. No, seriously, go get a bean from your cabinet and put it in the conditions into which it can grow. Do it with more than one. Experiment a little. See how it works out. Go to Boy Scouts. Go to 4-H Club. Go to summer camp where you like do things like archery and water skiing and games and stuff. That's the participation. This other like higher participation is not healthy for you if you don't have a grounded participation in nature. Nature is a bear. Nature is a bitch. Nature's a pain. Nature is chaotic. You need to learn about that first. And then you can go to church and it will make more sense. There's a great video, probably 5 years old now, actually. John Vervaeke did with, I think the guy's name is Jacob Kashir. Memory don't fail me now. And he gave the most wonderful description. He said, I know I've talked about this before, but it's my channel. You'll have to hear it again. Gave the most wonderful description. He said he was trapped in Athens, Greece during fake news virus scam. And I was like, can I be trapped in Athens, Greece, please? Please, please, pretty please, please trap me in Athens, Greece. And he went into an Orthodox church. And he said he saw all the stuff there and all the shiny things and all that. And, you know, he's amazed by all of it, obviously. But he said nothing happened. And he had done psychedelics and all that. So he'd had some of these weird experiences. He said, but then he went outside of the church. And then he started to see the patterns that were in the church in the outside world. And that's when it hit him. And not one interview, and he's given that that particular story in at least 2 places. That interview really informed a lot of our work on navigating patterns in the Mark of Wisdom Discord, which was back then we didn't have the Discord. We were on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord. That informed a lot of our work. That informed the knowledge engine model and a bunch of things. It really opened up a way to relate to the meaning crisis, to the stuckness of people in the world. It really gave me a sense for how to communicate to people something that I knew intuitively, we'll say, right? And understood intuitively. So that they could relate to it using propositions. Those propositions were not available before Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke come on the scene. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude. That's why there is a petersonsphere.com website. There is a phenomena that happened as a result of Jordan Peterson. He did create a bridge between the broken open academia and the wider world of YouTube in particular. Not just YouTube, the online world, because he started all of this on Quora. That's where 12 Rules for Life book comes from. That's how he got popular on the internet. That's why if I had somebody who spent way too much time on Reddit and was willing to just converse about my videos, my channel would blow up like you wouldn't believe. I actually knew a guy, Ron Brown, I believe his name is, lives in Toronto, Canada. He had a channel for a while. I haven't seen anything posted by him in a while. I haven't seen him online recently. Used to be on Bridges of Meaning. He had a channel. I think he had like 438 subscribers or something, and I had more than he did back then. And his videos all had 22,000 views. And I'm like, bro, how do you do this? And he's like, oh, I'm on Reddit all day. And I'm like, oh, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Lynn, good to see you, Lynn. Sense Space is his YouTube channel. Oh yeah. I think he is a father. Yeah. No, he's doing great, but that's why. Buggle Pong, hell is other people. Well, it certainly can be if you make it that way. Yon God insists that Kirk just needs a really, really good hangover. I don't know about that. Kirk, I participate in chess club. Oh my God, dude. Nature. Do you not know what nature? Chess is not natural. I hate to break it to you. Synagogue, also not natural. And sometimes swimming. Well, that's closer, I guess. In better weather. Is that healthy enough? No. Grow a bean. Like, start a garden. Go, like, learn archery. Compete in an archery contest. How's that? Play a cooperative game with several people, like basketball or something. Like, go outside, cut down trees, learn how they fall on your face. Usually it's fine. You'll get over it. You're young. You'll heal. I did. Ixnon, start with participation. Church is harder than the outside to participate in. Yeah, well, properly. I mean, that's the thing, Ixnon, right? It's an excellent point. Like, this is the problem, right? You get a bunch of people in the meaning crisis who are actually crisis of faith people. They used to go to church. They don't go to church anymore. Time to go back to church doesn't actually work because they've fallen down out of the crisis of faith and into the meaning crisis. So they were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, sometimes 60s and 70s that we met, and they just couldn't get back into church. They also, I'm sure it's total random coincidence, didn't like poetry anymore or never had liked poetry. And I was like, well, isn't that an interesting coincidence? That's absolutely not a freaking coincidence, by the way. Poetic way of informing the world, anybody? Which, to be fair to us, we used to call the parabolic, which is more accurate and precise. But poetic is better, so we changed it because we can change things when we realize we make mistakes. I wish Eric could do that because a bunch of people pointed out to him a bunch of mistakes in his geometric unity theory, and he never corrected them because he's a big, fat, arrogant jerk. Just to let you know, in case that wasn't clear from earlier. Poor bad stats. Do you have any favorite poets? William Blake, obviously. Sure, that has nothing to do with the fact that my father has a PhD in English literature, and he got that by writing his thesis on William Blake. Not connected, I'm sure. Also, The Tiger is awesome. Somebody was like, oh, Jerusalem's his best known poem. And I'm like, Jerusalem is crap. The Tiger is the only one true poem. There can be only one. But I tend to be a bit of an extremist, and I love hyperbole. So I say things like that constantly. This is called Tuesday with Mark. I think the problem with poetry in general is a lot of people believe they like have an understanding of or appreciation for a poem, and that isn't the thing. I enjoy Heinrich Heine and Edgar Allan Poe. I like Edgar Allan Poe, but he's all right. He's no William Blake. But William Blake used to walk around his estate naked and talk to angels in the trees. So, you know, trade-offs. Trade-offs. That's the other thing no one ever tells you. I don't know why. These really high IQ people don't really tell you that about the only thing high IQ, and it's not even high IQ, actually, the correlations with high education actually correlates with is mental illness. Oops. I don't know why they don't mention that. Oh, why wouldn't they mention that? Oh, maybe you guys can help me out. If you know why, put it in the comments. Yeah, a little weird. A little weird. Yeah, they don't mention other things like, oh, drug use in your teens, and also older in life, not just in your teens, correlates with schizophrenia. It's the number one cause of schizophrenia is drug use. Oops. Why don't they mention? How awkward. Now, all these people telling you psychedelics are great, and I do mean all, at least that I know of, also say we can't know reality. That's another weird coincidence. Huh. I wonder if there's any sort of explanation for these weird coincidences. Huh. I don't know. It's too hard for me to work out. Yeah, it's just too much math involved, I guess. It's weird that they don't mention it though, huh? Hmm. I wonder what else they're hiding. If you want to believe those people, that's up to you. I don't care. But they don't know reality. And I'm not going to believe somebody who admits to me that they don't know reality. That's not going to happen. Other things are going to happen. That ain't one of them. I suggest that you also don't believe people that admit that they don't know reality or say we can't know reality or claim to be the only ones that know reality because that ain't any better. And this reality thing isn't that hard because we live it by definition. You can say, well, that's a tautology. No, it's really not. A tautology is something that leads back to itself. It's self-referential. That does not lead back to itself. And that's the problem. Kirk, who has no ability to put two and two together. What's your perspective on recreational drug use? Drugs are bad. Don't ever use them. They cause schizophrenia. That's the most likely outcome from drug use. I remember my buddy Craig, the brilliant one. At one point, he couldn't form coherent sentences anymore, like for real. And everybody in the house was like, what happened? And interestingly, who could understand what he was saying? This guy, because I'm not so tied up on language and I'm also extraordinarily good at language. Like really good. You've no idea. You have no idea the things I can figure out just from what you say and how you say it. Um, I could understand him because I'm intuitive. So I was like, oh, so he's saying this. And they're like, how are you translating him? And I'm like, well, he says this, and that really means this. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, yeah. That's, but I knew how he thought too, because he was my roommate. Like I knew him pretty well. I had 4.5 hour conversation with him, making him not an anarchist anymore. I understood how he thought quite well. Thank you very much. Not what he thought, but how he thought. Those are different things. So what happened was he had been using nitrous oxide and some LSD and some shrooms for a month, pretty much every day. And he also invented the 0 1, which is his new mathematical concept where you take zeros and ones out of the number scheme and combine them into a single symbol, if I'm remembering correctly. It doesn't make any sense, so don't expect me to remember it correctly, but I think that's what it boiled down to. It's very complicated because he knows math really well and I suck at math. Um, and then when quantum computers came around, he was like, "See, I was right," and I was like, "You're still an idiot." No. Um, so anyway, it took me a week to get him to go to the hospital, to the doctors rather. He didn't want to go to the doctors because one of his other paranoid friends, who later on switched their genders. This is in the early '90s, by the way. So I'm just saying, I'm quite familiar with this world. Um, Chris became Chrissy, and I'm like, get away from me. he had convinced Craig that if he went to the doctors, he'd be arrested for doing drugs. And I said, no, that's actually illegal in the United States, but particularly in the state of Massachusetts. They can't actually report you. But you do have to go to the doctors and tell him exactly what you took. And then it turns out that the problem was he was huffing enough low-grade nitrous oxide from a very large gas tank. The ones that do balloons. It was that size, the party balloon size tank. I forget what they are. Are they 10-gallon or I forget, whatever. They're high pressure tanks. They're very tall though. They're like 4.5 feet high. And he had given himself heavy metal poisoning, and that is what was ailing him. And they put him on some drugs for a while, some chelation drugs, and after a month he was fine again, kind of. He held on to the 0-1 thing that he found during one of his trips, and I don't think that was good for him. But the problem is all these drug people will tell you up front, and they do this with relationships too. Like, I knew polyamorous people when I was 18. It was in the early 90s, late 80s. These people will tell you, oh, we have all these rules and consent. Like, they were doing the consent thing back then, and it didn't work. So I know it doesn't work because I watched them try it. And they were highly competent people. If anybody could pull it off, they could. But even they couldn't pull it off. I'm like, well, no one else can then. That's pretty easy. They will tell you, oh, no, we have rules for taking drugs. They would not follow those rules because when you start taking drugs, you feel good. The rules slip. That happens to all of them. I've never seen that not happen. Bad trips are unavoidable. They'll tell you, oh, no, the bad trip's a result of blah, blah, blah. They're all materialist explanations that are all wrong. The problem with the bad trip is the person who's watching the person on drugs is also traumatized by their inability to help this person on drugs. Two people suffer. Don't do drugs. This isn't that hard. People are talking about doing drugs. Ignore everything they say. Everything. It's all tainted. Kirk, I like being a troll, so I'm not a fan. I've heard some people claim recreational drugs lead them to mystical experience. Of course they do. You know what else leads you to mystical experiences? Breathing exercises. Just do Wim Hof. You'll get a mystical experience. It's not that hard. There's lots of ways to get mystical experiences. And that was always where they fell down, right? They'd make this argument for their stupid drugs, and they'd go like, well, you can't know my experience. And I go, yeah, but I have a similar experience that I'm describing without those drugs, and you can't know my experience. So now what? And then, of course, the logic breaks down because logic doesn't really solve a problem, and they have to capitulate and shut the hell up about their stupid drug experience. And the Indian mystics will tell you this. They've written about this many, many times. They said a problem with drugs is that it's a lot like taking a helicopter to the peak of the mountain. You need the helicopter to get there. And without the drugs, you can still get there, but you don't have the helicopter. You don't need the helicopter. You're not reliant on the helicopter. That's better. And it's deeper. I've talked about this elsewhere. I think I talked about it on Karen Wong's channel, The Meaning Code. Maybe the first time I talked to her, maybe the second time I talked to her. I forget. I've talked about this with Vanderklay, I think. I've talked about it before. Like, no, all the traditions say that you can get a deeper mystical experiences without drugs and with drugs. You know who else talked about this? It was talked about on John Vervaeke's channel. Shoot, now I can't remember the guy's name. One of the guys he had early on, who's a friend of his, who actually studied under some of the famous mystics out in New York City, I believe, if I remember correctly. And man, he has a funny name too. Why can't I remember his name? This is what happens when you aren't feeling well and you don't have the best brain in the world today. You kind of forget things. He was talking about this experience and about the fact that he was into drugs and he did all that, we'll say back in the day or whatever. And that was not as deep as getting there through his meditation practice. And Rapetti, that's his name, Rick Rapetti. There we go. Look, I didn't even get to look it up. Rick Rapetti. He has like 4 or 5 conversations with Raveki. Rapetti talks about having been on all those psychedelics, having gone through this experience with these people, and then having gone back to psychedelics, and then having gotten off them again. So if you want to know about that, listen to Rick Rapetti talk to Raveki about it. Ignore Raveki's ridiculously disconnected response to all of Rapetti's negative information that John Raveki is going like, well, that's wonderful. And Rick's kind of like, no, it really wasn't. Yeah, his stories are really good. Rick Rapetti's stories about those times and those people and what was going on, and really excellent. And I'll tell you, the drug use and the sexual degeneracy go together. I don't know why. I don't care why. I just see it, and it's there, and you need to contend with it because it's real. And when you don't just observe the world and let reality come to you, you believe you can't know reality. No, you're just rejecting reality because it disagrees with the imagination that you have about the world. And that's what you need to avoid. Because if you don't do that, you won't be better. But you need to be better because the world needs you. The world needs you to be a better world. It's that simple. Listen, guys, I will be on next week. So far as I can tell, I might get sick. I almost get sick on yesterday's live stream. Thought I might get sick on this live stream, but I did not, thankfully. But if I am not sick, I will have a live stream next week. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Be with your family. Let the reality of the connections around you inform your good cheer. And try to see everything as good cheer. Kirk, I'm confused how you're not good at math if you're a computer science guy. Computers are good at math. You don't need to be good at math. I've talked about this before. I thought mathematical reasoning overlaps with computational reasoning. It does not. There's no such thing as computational reasoning. Merry Christmas. Take care of yourself and each other. Experience the quality of the relationships around you. Your relationship with nature, your relationship with others, and your relationship with yourself. The 3 frames. I have a video on that. I wish I had linked it. Good night. Enjoy. Hopefully, I will see you in a week. And if I do a live stream before then, maybe I'll see you before then. Watch my videos if you don't believe anything I say, and then maybe you will. Watch Rick Rapetti talk to John Vervaeke. Their first conversation, quite good. And look, reality's right there, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, Lynn. I always enjoy. And thank you for those clips on my Discord server. That's super helpful. No idea. It's super helpful. Just take care of yourselves and pay attention to reality around you. Be positive about it. Your life will improve. Good night.